Okay, so you proved that Joe Biden didn't cut funds to HBCUs, but can you prove that he's not a racist? Why would you say he's a racist? Because he wrote the 94 crime bill that led to the incarceration of thousands of black people. He wrote it? Yep. Dang, you're right. A crime bill that leads to incarcerating a disproportionate amount of black people? It's definitely racist. Yeah. Man, and Democrats supported that? Sure did. You think when he wrote it, he knew it was going to lead to the incarceration of a bunch of black people? Absolutely. Dude, Joe Biden and Democrats, they're evil. So not just Joe Biden, Democrats, racist. You're finally getting it. It's always been the Democrats, not the Republicans. Yeah, because Republicans would never support anything like that. Heck nah. Yeah, because then we consider it a systemic issue and not just a Democrat issue, right? Yep. So what if I told you that bill first passed the Senate by a vote of 95-4? What? Yeah, only 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans voted against it. Hold up, what? You think when all those Republicans voted for it, they knew it was going to lead to incarcerating a bunch of black people? Oh, but wait. It was held up in the House because the Republicans didn't think it was tough enough, so they knew. But after all that, it still got bipartisan support. Man, so both Democrats and Republicans decided, let's incarcerate more black people. It's almost like there's an intersection of race and laws in this country. Wow.
So this TikToker by the name of Snare Squad points out something that both Republicans and Democrats love to do, and that is they like to point fingers at each other to say who is the real racist one. But the harsh reality is that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are fundamentally racist at their core. Now, obviously there's a difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and this difference does make a difference in terms of the material reality. Like, for example, Democrats are big proponents of what is known as black capitalism. That is to say, to create specific opportunities for black Americans in order to have specific opportunities so that some of them are allowed to access a certain degree of wealth. However, they are not interested in fundamentally dealing with the systemic issues that face black Americans in the United States. The Republican Party, however, still supports all of the systemic racism that exists, but also they want to take the extra measure of denying black Americans any entry into the capitalist sphere. But the reality is, neither of these parties has a vested interest in fundamentally changing and uprooting the racist structure of the United States. And this can be seen very, very clearly in the simple fact that not only is there no serious discussion about reparations that's happening, but on top of that, when it comes to dealing with things like student loan debt, the housing crisis, both Democrats and Republicans are pretty much against any type of structural change. So, for example, if you look at the 2008 crisis, when a disproportionate number of black families were losing their homes because of the mass foreclosures and the predatory lending, you'll notice how, even though the Democrats were in charge, they didn't bail out the people who were given predatory loans. They bailed out the banks. The Republicans didn't really have any interest in anything else either. They also just wanted a big bailout for the banks. But so let's think about this for a second and understand why exactly this is, because the reality is that Democrats to this day are supporting the war on drugs. If Joe Biden wanted to, tomorrow he could completely deschedule marijuana. But the reason he doesn't do that is because he understands that our system is predicated on maintaining racial inequality in order to create specific class divisions. These class divisions that exist where different people among the working class are afforded different privileges in different parts of society is designed specifically to lead to the social reproduction of capitalist norms of hierarchy and oppression. That is to say, our system depends on the denial of access to capital to working class people. And when you have an entire layer of racism on top of that, what you end up with is white folks having an extreme degree of privilege, having a lot more proximity to power, having a lot more proximity to capital, that allows them to feel as though that they are more superior in some way, shape, or form, or more connected to power. And the purpose of that is to basically make sure that privileged folks are never choosing to side with the more marginalized around them, but instead choosing to side with capital, because in their mind, because they have more proximity to capital, as long as the capitalists are in power and maintaining their positions, they're also going to be sitting pretty themselves. This creates real economic incentives and real material incentives for white Americans to propagate this racist system. One of the reasons why capitalists really like racial inequality when it comes to income is because if there are people that are struggling to get jobs because they know that there's a lot of racist employers out there, and because racist employers are offering people lower wages or refusing to hire people outright, that creates a division in the working class that allows capitalists to maintain an environment where wages are constantly driven down. I mean, think about this for a second. If, for example, a worker tries to ask for better wages, we know that there are a lot of people that are systematically marginalized in our system so that they're forced into situations where they're just more desperate for work. This desperation is a tool that capitalists use to let workers know that they're easily replaceable. This drives down wages for everybody. The people most directly impacted by this, in this case, are Black Americans who have to deal with an extreme amount of discrimination. But if their wages are being driven down and employers know this, employers can use this as leverage to lower wages for every worker. And this is just one of the ways in which capitalism and racism intersect with each other and depend on each other. But this is also why the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, both which fundamentally serve the interests of capital, refuse to fundamentally address the systemic inequalities that exist within our system. This is Ben Carollo with Rebel Headquarters. You can catch my show Galaxy Brain on the Young Turks Twitch channel every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to stay up to date with my content, you can follow me at Benjamin Carollo on Twitter. And for those of you that might be wondering or have noticed, my pronouns are in fact she, her.